The baseball insiders are back, baby. Hope you enjoyed your opening day. I know I did. And then I also enjoyed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Fun time to watch baseball. Fun time to overreact to the weekend's action. What did we learn about these teams, these seasons over the course of 162? It's a long season. You can't forget that. This matters only slightly more than spring training does, but these games are in the books. A couple of teams have already surprised us, and FanSided MLB Insider Robert Murray and I are going to break it all down, as well as the Jordan Montgomery deal that went live between previous shows. We took Thursday off so that I could go to opening day. We'll talk all about that, but Monty signed. It actually happened, and so here with me to break it down is Robert Murray, FanSided's own MLB Insider. Robert, how you doing, dude?
I'm great, man. We finally have all the big Boras guys off the board. It only took like a million months, but we finally did it. And Jordan Montgomery going to the Arizona Diamondbacks was not something I had on my radar at all. I do have some insight on that deal and a detail that has not been reported yet, at least to my knowledge. We'll bring that up later on in the show. But before we dive into that, Adam Weinrib, how are you? How was Cincinnati?
I'm good. Yeah, let's talk about this before I go to the ad read, because Cincinnati was unbelievable. If anybody does not know how they do opening day in Cincy, it's something that I'd heard about pre-pandemic, or like during the pandemic. I really started thinking about it because I was like, man, I've always wanted to go see the Cincinnati opening day parade. Now everything baseball has been taken from me. I can't leave my house. So I was sitting there during the pandemic. I was like, someday, I was saying to myself, I was like, next year, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to Cincinnati. So that was 2021. Turned out 2021 still pretty pandemic-y. So no, I could not do that. And then 22 couldn't make it. I was planning a wedding. Cincinnati had to go on the back burner. 23 just didn't happen. And the Reds were bad. Now the Reds are good, we think. Seems like the Reds are good. And I finally decided, let's do it. Flights were expensive. Everybody wants to go to Cincinnati for opening day. So we drove. In the car for 10 hours Wednesday. I left at 3:45 a.m. And everything people say about Cincinnati is 100% true. The streets were packed with people. Shut down. They do the parade from up by the market down to the ballpark, which is like a 25-minute walk. It was packed all the way down the parade route. Fountain Square, they were selling beer. They were selling chili cheese conies. They were selling Reds gear and merch. You go down to the ballpark and they've got a street shut down with like clubs and music venues and private businesses and bars and stuff. You could not walk through that street. I was down there at 1:30 trying to get into the Reds Hall of Fame, trying to get into the stadium. You couldn't move through it. It took at least 25 minutes off my day. Put some stuff on the channel, went live a couple of times eating chili cheese dogs and showing you all the insanity of the parade. But if you haven't done it, you have to do it. You can't believe it that everyone is out at 11:15 in the morning on a weekday, on a Thursday, drinking on outdoor porches. We're lucky the weather was nice too. It was like 65, baking sunny. Took my winter coat off. Had to hold it in my hand the rest of the day, which is obviously annoying. You don't want to do that. But just absolutely perfect day. And couldn't have been better. Couldn't have been a better time, and I recommend it to everybody.
No, I'll tell you, I've heard great things about Cincinnati on opening day. I've never personally gone, but from what I saw of you post, and then also that, maybe I have to end up getting to Cincinnati for an opening day at some point, because that sounds pretty electric.
It was completely electric. We got to consider doing it. Maybe do a live show next year. I'm trying to come back for the playoffs. I am. So if you're betting on the Reds, any other team, you're influenced by the action you saw this weekend, DraftKings Sportsbook is the spot to go. They're offering a fantastic sign-up bonus for new users. You customers can place a $5 first bet on any sport to instantly claim $150 in bonus bets when you sign up with our code Baseball Insider. Best part is you'll receive your rewards even if your first bet loses. Using our code Baseball Insider not only gets you these bonuses, but it also directly supports this podcast. So if you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use the code Baseball Insider to maximize those first bets. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check that episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. This episode, of course, also want to tell you to join the Discord. If you haven't, we'd love to have you in our Discord server. It's where Robert shares info, tips, and tricks he's able to get before anybody else, and it'll help you become the most informed fan. Multiple levels you can join at. Recommend the Rumor Mill if you want to come join us. We'd love to have you. All-Star tier is also there as well. Give everybody a little bit of inside track on some scoops and a private call monthly. We're trying to get that scheduled. I think we're looking at next week for our next All-Star call, but we appreciate everybody sticking with us all off-season long. And the off-season is now kind of over because Jordan Montgomery signed last week. There are still Baseball Insider's fan favorites who have yet to sign. Tommy Pham, still not on a Major League Baseball team. I guess I don't want to start on a bummer note, but we know we're going to get asked about Pham. So before we talk about Jordan Montgomery to the D-backs, Mike Clevenger also not on a roster. Tommy Pham still out there. So what can you tell us about these guys?
Yeah, as far as Pham goes, he's been a really confusing guy in terms of free agency here because he was coming off of a really good year with the Mets and the Diamondbacks. And you talk to people around the Diamondbacks, not only was he really good on the field, but he was a pretty vital part of that clubhouse. And it was a guy that the young players leaned on, especially come postseason time. And between that and then Steve Cohen going out of his way to give him like a glowing review once he was traded out of New York, it seemed like a guy who would finally change the narrative surrounding his character, especially after the slap that was heard around the world with Jock Peterson. And yet his market this offseason has just been nothing. And there was obviously there was reports about him not receiving offers. I think to this point, he's still been lowballed and hasn't gotten to the offer that he wants, clearly, because he hasn't signed yet. We're past opening day. But there have been teams that have been interested, like the Padres have been interested. The White Sox have been interested. There's been other teams that have shown interest in Pham, but the dollar amount has just not lined up. And it's just, he's remaining on the market. I don't know necessarily where he's at as far as his current market or if he's closer to signing, but the fact that he's still unsigned past opening day is pretty crazy to me. And then as far as Mike Clevenger goes, he has drawn interest from a couple different teams, but I don't know of anything else there at this point. But I just know there's a couple teams involved, and we're kind of in wait and see mode on that one.
Yeah, fair. And anybody, again, we were talking the last couple of weeks, like Blake Snell, not going to be ready for opening day. Jordan Montgomery, not going to be ready for opening day. It's not like Clevenger's losing, he's losing steam every day he doesn't sign, but there are a bunch of players who weren't going to be ready for opening day anyway. He was in that bucket, so now he has more time to seek out his next opportunity. The Monty stuff is genuinely weird to me because there was a little bit of Diamondbacks momentum at the end of his free agency. You heard the Orioles start to get mentioned more and more. The Yankees were on the periphery, and you heard John Heyman, I believe maybe it was Joel Sherman, who floated sort of, hey, here's what he was asking for, here's what he's asking for now, and here's what the Yankees are offering. And they were very far apart. But you thought, hey, maybe they'll mend some fences, add in the fact that Montgomery didn't like being sent away from New York, and that seemed like a tough fit. But either way, Orioles buzz, Diamondbacks buzz, just a little bit creeping in there. Red Sox all offseason, the connection was there. The Rangers kind of presumed he would go there until Texas shut the door forcefully. Everybody was thinking maybe the Angels could hop in. Either way, there are a lot of teams all operating at what felt like 15% capacity in the Jordan Montgomery chase. All of a sudden, the Diamondbacks come in and get him, and it's basically another one-year deal. We're all talking about, hey, how low is he willing to go? Snell's got 2 with the opt-out. Bellinger's got the opt-out. Montgomery, you're thinking probably a 5-year deal, maybe opt-out after 3, I was thinking. Like, that's as low as you're going to get. All of a sudden, we get another 1 year with a weird option. How did the Diamondbacks get to the front of the line here? How fast did this move? And, I mean, your jaw still seems like it's on the floor knowing the details of the deal.
Yeah, it was wild because I'll tell you, the Diamondbacks were not on my radar for this. I can confidently say that they were not on my radar. And as soon as they signed Erod, like I thought, maybe they could even use another starting pitcher. But I didn't think they would end up going for the caliber of an arm of a Jordan Montgomery. And then as he continued to linger on the market, and Erod's status as far as his injury was uncertain, it offered an opportunity for the Diamondbacks to really pounce and get their payroll to a record level. And they ended up engaging on Montgomery. They ended up, they made an offer, and then Montgomery's camp ended up countering. And I believe the final deal was pretty similar to what was ended up, or what was countered by Boras. And so it it happened pretty quickly here. And this was a deal that made so much sense for the Diamondbacks to do. Like, I mean, if you're able to get a Montgomery type on a 1-year deal for like this and go all in on 2024, you do it. Now the rotation is really freaking good. But I will tell you, this really underscores a tough offseason for Boras. He was aiming for 200 plus million on Bellinger. Obviously, he did not get the deals for Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery or even Matt Chapman. Like, he had the big Boras 4, and he came up pretty much empty. That JD Martinez deal, I will tell you, it's flown under the radar, but that has gotten a lot of criticism. Just the dollar amount there. And I had someone even bring it up to me the other day where Charlie Blackmon ended up getting more guaranteed this year than JD Martinez did. Because Blackmon ended up doing an extension, I believe, late last year it was. And I mean, Blackmon, obviously a historic Rockies player, don't get me wrong, but as far as recent production, like JD Martinez is certainly a guy coming off of a great year for the Dodgers. So it's overall a really, really, really tough offseason for Boras. This Montgomery deal, pretty brutal. Obviously, $25 million. He's going to end up, and I will tell you this, I think a really underrated aspect of this deal is he was really good in St. Louis, and he was also really good in Texas. But now he's going to be working for a pitching coach or under a pitching coach in Brent Strom, who is awesome. And I think that's going to end up being something that is really vital for Montgomery and could even unlock him even more.
And it's funny because it's a great landing spot for this year. We talked on our preview episode about how upstart teams like the Diamondbacks don't typically make the World Series as an underdog, as an 84-win team, and then build on it immediately the next year. They now have an opportunity to do that with Montgomery and Rodriguez and the existing young core. The rotation is among the league's best at this point after being a little top-heavy last year. Merrill Kelly already looks like he's getting off on the same foot as last year. So I love the Diamondbacks more today than I did during the preview episode. But let's see how he does under Strom. Let's see how the team does. I wouldn't count out any of the teams that we foresaw for Montgomery for next year. The Rangers could theoretically clear payroll next year and welcome him right back on a longer-term deal. The Red Sox could be in a better position. Montgomery told John Heyman, I don't want to be on the Red Sox. I don't want to lose or whatever.
Yeah. Also, how about that nugget?
How about that? Through one weekend, though, the Red Sox pitching under Andrew Bailey, they're looking for length this year. They're looking for sustainability, repeatability, and one weekend does not a season make, but 4 very good starts for the Boston Red Sox against the Seattle Mariners team. Got a lot of swing and miss from those Mariners. Mariners didn't hit much at all this weekend, and the Red Sox could have taken 3 out of 4. So maybe the Red Sox look a little more appealing with Andrew Bailey at the end of this season. Maybe they're better positioned for success. Maybe they got more financial wiggle room. I wouldn't rule out any of the long-term destinations we were already talking about for Monty, but could just work out great with the Snakes in the desert, could revisit things after the season. Either way, he's not screwed by this Boras deal, but it is a Boras failure. It's a 1-year deal. That's not good.
Oh, absolutely. It is like, it's a failure, and it was like the exclamation point on what was a really tough offseason for Boras. And like, I think you made a really strong point here about how these teams that were mentioned for Montgomery this year could end up being candidates for him next year, especially when they might have more clarity on the TV deal situation. I think that's something that is a great point. Another one that you said too is Andrew Bailey in the Red Sox. And obviously Bailey was a real highly coveted guy, and getting him in Boston was a huge deal. I know what people around the league think of him. And if he ends up doing doing what he does best with the Red Sox and gets that rotation, that bullpen in a really good spot, I wouldn't be surprised if he even interviewed for some managerial openings. That seems like a guy who these teams could really like. And obviously teams are always looking to maximize pitching. And if you can end up getting a guy who, former player, really good with the pitching staff and really good with players overall, I think he'd make sense for some interviews here. Obviously, we're 3 or 4 games into the season, so we're really getting ahead of it here. But I think that's a guy who could end up being on some managerial lists.
But that's what this episode's about. It's about getting ahead of things. It's about overreactions, because if anybody is pretending after 3 or 4 games of the MLB season that they have learned anything or that they have changed their mind and done a 180 and they're really ready to predict the team they thought was going to fall flat is going to contend for the World Series, etc. They're lying. I was just saying, this is like the one Monday a year before the World Series where Stephen A. Smith is going to be talking baseball. Like, he's definitely on I didn't watch it, but he was definitely on today being like, my Yankees are legit or whatever, because they tell Stephen A to talk baseball once a year, and then he does briefly, and he talks about who's 3-0 and who's 0-3. So these are all overreactions. We're just having fun, but teams can show you something that they did not show you during spring training, and certainly not on paper during the offseason that first weekend. The New York Yankees showed me something I did not expect to see this weekend. But if you are a Baseball Insiders viewer, you knew that we thought Juan Soto was being underrated as an offseason addition. And after 4 games in Houston, where I think a lot of people thought the Yankees could get swept, especially 1 inning into Nestor Cortez's start on opening day, instead they do the sweeping. They come back 3 times. They win 4 games that were tied in the 6th inning or later, or where they were trailing in the 6th inning or later. They haven't done that to start a season since 1950 is the last year that they did that. They haven't gone 4-0 to start a season since 2003. Long way to go, but as I was noting on the Yanks Go Yard podcast, they've already clinched the season series from Houston. So, like, does this win them a division? Does this get them a straight trip to the ALCS? No, none of that, but they do have something tangible now. They will win the season series. They play 7 games. They've won 4 of them. They already have the tiebreaker over Houston. The patient at-bats they showed, obviously led by Soto, but also Oswaldo Cabrera. The walks they took, Austin Wells, Anthony Volpe looked like a different hitter. We were told that all spring, and then we saw it. And the bullpen, we can hear all we want about how the Yankees print arms, and they lost a lot of trusted bullpen arms, and I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. They didn't allow a single run this weekend. Jonathan Loáisiga allowed 1 inherited runner to score, and that was it. So I'm very impressed with the Yankees. Long way to go, but they already have a tangible feather in their cap taking the season series from Houston. I would call myself surprised. I'm not saying, it's over. It's it. They're great. They're going to win the World Series. No, but I am very surprised by what I saw. Did anybody else surprise you, either positively or negatively? Because I definitely was negatively surprised by some teams I watched too, going, I thought you were better than that, but I don't know what I'm looking at anymore.
I'll tell you. Also, I'll start with one series, and it's going to mention both teams here. It's the Brewers and Mets. So the Brewers, they obviously, a lot of people have been picking them to have a down year. Losing Craig Counsell, obviously a huge blow there. Then trading Corbin Burns, and then not having Brandon Woodruff for the entire year. I mean, they were primed for a letdown season, but to start off the year here, they look like a scrappy bunch with Pat Murphy as their manager. Like they play hard. You see their closer ended up putting the gun in the holster as a celebration for. I thought that was cool. And they play with an edge. Obviously, what happened between Rhys Hoskins and Jeff McNeil, that was a whole mess. I will say, the slide was a lot for sure. But here's the thing: is that he backed it up, and then he ended up having 4 RBI in the first 3 innings of the game. I thought that was that was freaking awesome, and he ended up making McNeil and doing that. That was awesome. And baseball needs more of that, because Hoskins was the villain, but then he ended up coming out on top here, and then he ended up making McNeil look like the real villain here. So it's good. But as far as the Mets, I mean, they could not have asked for a worse start to the season there. They obviously ended up hiring David Stearns. They got Mendoza as their manager, and they thought they had some really good pieces in place. And obviously they do. Over 3 games into the season, or 4 games into the season. So, I mean, you can't take too much from that. But that team looked like it had a lot of flaws, and it's not a tough team at this point. So obviously they have a lot of growing to do. But my big takeaway from that series is that the Brewers right now are exactly what the Mets want to become, and that the Mets will obviously do that on a bigger, higher payroll level. But the Brewers have the pitching and the defense that David Stearns is going to try to build in New York. And it just showed, at least as of right now, the Mets got a long way to go.
Yeah, Stearns obviously barely made an imprint on this team at all, and he tried to collect rental pitchers and guys who were bounce back candidates, etc. But it is funny living in New York. I was even in Cincinnati this week. I was driving through the middle of Ohio, but you could feel it. A lot of pieces were published about how before I left, everybody was like, JD Martinez, kind of a sneaky addition to an underrated Mets team. Like maybe they made better moves than we thought this offseason. Maybe they're better set up to contend. And then all of a sudden, 3 games in, rain out. They get 1 hit in the opener. Hoskins makes McNeil his child. Luis Severino's got the same velocity in the opener that he did in spring training, but he gives up 12 hits and 6 earned runs in 5 innings. Carlos Mendoza already got fined and suspended after 1 day as manager. The Mets bring in a random bullpen guy 7 innings after the first pitch to throw at Hoskins. He gets fined and suspended. It kind of feels like this is now one of those years for the Mets again, and there have been plenty. And you don't hear quite so much glowing praise. And now that we've seen the Mets for 3 games, it kind of feels weird that JD Martinez is going to be here. It just does. Like, felt like a reinforcement for a solid fringe wildcard contender. And now when he makes his debut, I'm going to be like, wait, what? Like, I've already forgotten about the Mets this season. And that's obviously preemptive, but it's going to be weird watching him just join this team on April 20th. It's like, oh yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, and I will tell you, like, I think he's going to end up being, like, I totally agree with you, but I think he's going to end up being a really important piece. And as soon as he ends up coming back and, like, debuting for them, I think he can end up making an impact in more ways than one. Obviously, like, he's a really talented hitter coming off of a huge year with the Dodgers, but everything you hear from players who have been around him and played with him is that he's one of the most prepared players in baseball, and he's extremely smart, and he's just a really good player to have around the young players. And I think they can end up being a more prepared, more complete team, at least offensively, when he comes back, or when he ends up debuting. But I will say this. They can't be too far behind in that division when he eventually returns, because you look at the Braves, you look at the Phillies, that's a tough division. And if they fall out, or if they fall back too quickly here, then they could just be trying to come back the entire season. And that's never really a good spot to be in. But also, I want to give a shout out to the Pittsburgh Pirates, who started off this season very strong against the Miami Marlins. They look like a team who I said on this podcast before, I would not be surprised if they were a playoff team. A wild card team, I think, would make a lot of sense. I think next year is a real year that they could end up competing for the division. They have the young pitching, they have the offense, they have the bullpen. They have the makings of a really good team. And it would be really nice to see Bob Nutting, their owner there, invest more dollars into that team. I hope he does, because if they do, they could end up really making some noise. And who would have thought I'd ever say that about the Pirates? But they have the look, they have the feel, and they just need to maximize this thing. And the other team that I have on the not so good list here is the Houston Astros. That was pretty tough. Andrew, I do not hate the Padres. I don't have much to say about them besides that monster inning that they had the other day. That was good, but not really too much to bring up about the Padres here.
Nobody hates the Padres. Look, you can't write again. That's the problem is somebody praising the Yankees. It's somebody writing off the Astros for starting 0-4. You can't do that. I'm sure that the Astros will recover and will be able to, make noise in the AL West, if not outright win it. And you do hear Astros fans, though, sort of saying like, all right, well, come and see me when we got Verlander back or whatever. And yes, that is one guy. Lance McCullers is one guy as well. But Framber Valdez, Christian Javier were no slouches. Josh Hader threw in three of these 4 games and lost the 4th one. The Yankees got Ryan Presley twice. The Yankees got Brian Abreu in one of the middle games. The Yankees did a good job against some really top-notch Astros, and the offense is intact right now. Altuve played all these games. Jeremy Pena played all these games. Bregman, Alvarez, all the Astros lineup members that are fearsome were playing in these games, and they didn't take a single one of them. And they were all close. They were all coin flips, except for the second one where the defense fell apart mid-game. I was more impressed with the Yankees than I was depressed by the Astros. But that said, Houston still starts 0-4, and that's a black mark. I want to give the Tigers their flowers too. They sweep the White Sox, and you're going to hear a lot of, all right, well, it's the White Sox, though. Show me them beating a real team. And sure, fine. I think at some point they will. But you play who's on your schedule. Everybody, you can criticize people for facing easy teams and easy roads, and that's how fandom works. And we're all going to. Every rival is going to say it was an easy road, even during a World Series run. But there is no easy road. Look at what Duke just did with an 11 seed standing between them and the Final Four. They got outworked. They got outclassed in the second half by DJ Burns and NC State, who they had just lost to in the ACC tournament. Duke had no business losing to that team again 2 weeks later, but they did, because a motivated team is never easy to beat. Now, the White Sox, not really a motivated team at this juncture. They look like one of the worst teams in baseball, if not the outright worst. Oakland and Chicago in a who's worse off. But give the Tigers credit for toughing out all of those, and the bullpen for holding a couple of tight ones late against the White Sox. Pirates and Tigers had impressive wins over the weekend. So did the Yankees. Tight games, bullpen execution, late game offense. The Pirates ended up in extra innings over and over again. So credit to those teams. Credit to the Orioles, who we knew were good for bludgeoning the Angels in the first two games. Credit to the Red Sox pitching for surprising me as well. I think that the Red Sox collection of arms, solid if the bullpen can pull together and they don't have to rely on a Joely Rodriguez or a Justin Slayton. There could be something there too. The Red Sox offense didn't do much of anything. So Boston's offense needs to show up to match that pitching. Otherwise, it'll just be a topsy-turvy, weird year. Credit to the O's, credit to the Red Sox, credit to the Blue Jays. Justin Turner showed up this weekend, made some late noise. A lot of overreacting to do, and we're going to do plenty of it moving forward. But I think that's where I'm at right now. Credit to those teams. Credit to a lot of teams we were already ready to be impressed with. I mean, hey, the Dodgers were good. Breaking news. But good opening weekend for me. A lot of teams and players showing skill that might have gotten written off otherwise.
No, I agree. And also before we end up ending this episode here, there was a nugget about the Montgomery deal that I forgot to end up mentioning here.
Here we go.
So there is a clause in his contract that he has to be in the majors before April 19th. So I would imagine that Montgomery is going to be he's got to be, unless he ends up getting hurt, but he will be in the majors at some time before or on April 19th. That is a clause that is in his contract. So it's got to happen. So there we go. That's the news.
Well, there we go. That gives you a timeline for Montgomery's arrival. The Yankees miss him tonight. Oh, shucks. Oh, rats. But the Yankees and Snakes are playing in the desert. You're going to head over there.
I'll be there.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm going to shower up and then immediately head over there. So
yeah. Hopefully Luis Heel spins a gem. Either way, you get to see one of the early week surprises. So I expect a full report. Either way, thanks everybody for joining us today. Happy Monday. We're going to be back twice a week, same time as ever, 3:30 Eastern, wrapping up the week in action, hopefully introducing some fun segments, finding a way to get us to the trade deadline rumors, at which point, obviously, we will be once again taken over by rumors midseason. But for now, we're just talking ball here on the Baseball Insiders. Any other contract nuggets we're able to unveil and reveal to you all, of course, we will. But yeah, let's just soak in April and May. Baseball's back. It's played every single day. It matters every single day. These games count. And now it's time to see some maybe rookies emerge, underrated players en route to their first All-Star appearance, etc. I'm ready for it. I'm extremely ready. Robert Murray, thank you for joining me as always and help talk us through the surprises of the first weekend, because I got to watch the struggling Reds bullpen up close and personal. That was my surprise of the first weekend. I was mostly focused on the action in Cincinnati. They might need a reinforcement or two there. I don't know if Brent Suter is a closer, but thanks for helping us keep a bird's eye view on the whole start to the season. Yeah, we were all watching the Mets. That's just the way it was.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, my first game I went to this year is I had to watch the Colorado Rockies in person, so that's tough. Yeah,
you go to the 18-run inning or whatever that was.
Dude, that was ridiculous. And I'll tell you, the vibes will be much higher for Diamondbacks Yankees. I'm very excited for that one. That is going to be in a very good series here. My first time ever seeing the Yankees, actually, so that is even better. So first time seeing the Yankees, and yeah, let's get weird, as I like to say. Good stream today, my friend.
Good stream today. Thanks for joining me. You get to see the Yankees in their Superior Road jerseys, the grays without the outlines on the New York. I love how those look so far. Don't love that everybody's sweating through them immediately by the second inning. Shout out Fanatics. Great job, folks. But they do look better. Everybody else's jerseys look way worse, and the Yankees actually look a little bit better. So maybe that's why the vibes are so high. For Robert Murray, I'm Adam Weinrib. We'll catch you right back here on Thursday. See us on the Discord too. Join us if you haven't. We'll be chatting over there. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.